Hey everyone! Yay! Welcome to our third uh, book club through Military Spouse Magazine. We are super excited to have you guys. A few things before we start. So first, let's explain the book club. The book club, what it is it is basically the way that we do it here is, a spouse will pick a book. She will be the one hosting it, and we'll be asking her questions throughout. And if you have any questions, please feel free to chime in. Comments, questions, any interactions can be seen at your chat box. So please feel free to chat. We're going to be talking about the book, The Friends We Keep. And this book is basically talking about the friendships and the boundaries of how much a military spouse can give before she has nothing left to give. And that's a huge kind of make or break in our culture. But before we begin, I do have an announcement. So we have a social media contest, and if you go ahead and take a picture of yourself watching the Google Hangout today, you could win next month's book club book. Just use the hashtag MSBookClub attached to the picture on either Facebook or Twitter, and you could possibly win. Big deal, because this month we're doing three free books. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and take a picture of you going ahead hanging out in the Google chat with this mug and with Liz's mug, and you'll go ahead and receive that free copy of next month's book, which we'll announce at the end. So I'm really thrilled to introduce you to Elizabeth Snell. Call her Liz. She happens to be a very dear friend of mine, and she's also the founder of Military Spouses of Strength. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself and also go ahead and give a summary about the book before we begin with the questions. Liz, there you go.
Yay! It's my turn. Word. So I'm Elizabeth Snell. I married into the Marine Corps when I was 18 years old. My husband joined and graduated from boot camp on September 14th, 2001. So our entire military career, the only thing that we have known is the current state of events that we have today. And let's see, we went through 5 deployments. One of which he missed the birth of our youngest, and then the subsequent next deployment he missed her first birthday. So we did a lot of back to back. The last deployment, though, was very emotional for me, and I kind of just lost myself. And so this book by Susan Mallory, it's kind of how do I say? It's very to the point of, we need a network of friends and buddies and sisters or brothers that can help us navigate through life. This book isn't necessarily in regards to a military life book, but it speaks to any aspect, including military life. So after my husband's last deployment, I just wasn't in a good place, and I checked myself into a mental health hospital, and I got treatment that I needed, and from there I got out and discovered that I wasn't the only person that was dealing with some depression, whether it was clinical or situational, and so that's where Military Spouses of Strength was formed.
My bad. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with the questions. And like I said, chime in as you will, everyone. We welcome your comments and your questions. So the first question we have is, do you have friendships that have lasted regardless of the circumstances going on in each of your separate lives?
Oh, absolutely. I think that if we, as human beings, we have to be able to adapt to circumstances, especially within this military kind of community. There are so many different circumstances that change between PCSs and deployments and everything that could be had. If you can't adapt and kind of overcome together, then you end up becoming stagnant and potentially losing those friendships. And by allowing yourself to adapt, you form some great connections and friendships that could last you a lifetime.
Now, was there anything in particular within the book that that kind of stuck out with you regarding, staying friends regardless of circumstances?
Sure. So I think within this book in particular, there are, each girl, Nicole, Haley, Gabby, they all have their own life struggles. And while they might have their personal opinions about what those life struggles are or how those need to be resolved, at the end of the day, they're all there for each other.
Absolutely. So now here's a big one, and I guess I'm kind of it's a difficult thing for me. My previous duty station, I stayed there for 8 years, which is unheard of, especially in the Marine Corps. So I found it difficult occasionally to maintain those friendships, especially within the military community. When we transition so much sometimes. So how would we maintain those friendships?
Good question. I think that social media has such a negative connotation. We only ever hear the negative because we were afforded the ability to see people in lights that we probably wouldn't have. I'm not the type of person that goes over to a friend's home and with the exception of maybe MJ, and talks about politics. Politics and religion are usually my offhand subjects, but social media has afforded us that ability, and I don't necessarily think that that's a good thing, but I do think that social media is a great tool in staying connected. Take this book club, for example. 10 years ago, this would have never been possible. And so we can use tools like this to stay connected even through the course of distance.
That's true. And I mean, social media, yeah, like you said, it has a bad rap, but to be perfectly honest, the good, in my opinion, definitely outweighs the bad.
Right.
I think that might have something to do with perspective, though, or the fact that I'm a Facebook junkie. I'm just saying. So what I've come down to is even the friends that I have maintained a friendship with that have spanned, throughout the years, thanks a lot to social media and things like that, and found whatever. Sometimes if you're not in front of the person, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. I have a lot of friends that I've met in this lifestyle that are not afraid to gut check me, and I think that we really need that. Sometimes my friends don't agree with my life choices, and sometimes I don't agree with theirs. So sometimes we find ourselves in these predicaments where we need to support our friends even if we don't agree with their life choices. So I mean, how can we do that? And I'll even put it to the audience as well. If you want to offer anything up. I mean, I'm really curious, Liz, how do we do that?
So I think one of the first things that we need to understand that a true authentic friendship isn't saying that you and I, MJ, are always going to agree on everything. And understanding that it's okay to have those differences. And understanding that, at the end of the day, that we should voice those differences to each other, because sometimes it allows us to receive a different perspective on things that we might not have seen it in any other regard. So
can you give an example of that you might have experienced?
Absolutely. So I have some struggles with raising my teenage daughters, like any of us do, right? But I have gone to friends and spoken to them in regards to the topic, and they'll say, actually, MJ, when I think I was at your house earlier in the month, I think we had a discussion about my oldest and her eating habits, and you being my sociology friend were like, okay, well, this and this and this might be what's going on in her little brain. And so that kind of was a light bulb moment. And unless we have those authentic friendships, we're never going to be able to realize those types of perspectives.
So, like, it's kind of like growth, even though it sometimes hurts. We don't always want to hear what we hear, or, we're not always ready to receive that information. When we do and accept it, it's kind of like, okay, this is growth, and we can actually, like, move from this. I can do something with this.
Right. And just like Teresa says, it's okay to agree to disagree, but you should still be open enough to accept the other's opinion. The other caveat to that would be people are open to receiving opinions when they're not put on defensive. So within my household, it's me always saying, like to my girls when they're arguing, if you're wanting to get your point across, you're not saying, well, you're doing this to me. It's, I feel this way. And my husband says, well, that feels like an excuse. But I don't care if it feels like an excuse, because at the end of the day, that's how I feel. And if I put it in a term that's offensive to you, then you're not going to receive it.
That's absolutely true. And you know what, Teresa? Hi, Teresa. Teresa makes a great point. She says that it's okay to disagree, but you still should be open enough to be able to accept that other's opinion. And I think maybe putting that out there now to our friends, like when there's nothing going on right now and there is no gut checking needed, putting that out there now might give it the opportunity to be absorbed later.
Right. And you can open up the dialogue by saying, I'm going to say something and it might hurt your feelings and it could be seen as potentially offensive, but I'm just saying it because I care about you or because I love you, or
Makes sense. But just for the record, never preface, I don't mean to offend you. Like for me.
Right, because that, yeah.
Just like rip the Band-Aid off really quick. I love you, but check this out. Like, but you know me well enough to be able to know my reaction based on what you say.
Word.
Okay, so we often refer to our military spouse or military family culture as a tribe, as a village, okay? But oftentimes, and not just with new spouses. It's not just with new spouses. It might be at a new duty station, or it might be somebody who's been there for years. They might have a little trouble breaking into that tribe or breaking into that village. How would one go about doing this?
So I actually think this is a twofold question. As the newbie coming to the new duty station, or as the new spouse, we have to have kind of an open, I'm not saying you have to be the extrovert and, just be up in everybody's junk, but I am saying you have to be open to receiving new friendships, because people are going to notice if you're just standoffish and you don't want to have anything to do with anybody. But in the same regard, as seasoned spouses, we also have to be open to receiving the new spouses and welcoming them, well, whatever.
Welcoming them?
Yes, that. I promise I've not been drinking. Into our tribe. So, maybe it's a ritual of recognizing that we have a new neighbor and taking them a big dish, or even just going and saying, hello, my name is not Slim Shady.
Right. What? It's funny you say that, because Christina actually asks, hi Christina, when does the tribe actually become a clique?
That's a very good question. Mm-hmm. I like that question leads off of the last question, actually. I think a tribe becomes a clique when you're not willing to grow, to expand, when you have set boundaries of who you're going to allow into your tribe. And then really, what good is your tribe doing for you? Because at a point, so in my mind, I see a tribe as a community that helps each individual grow as person, as a military spouse, as a mom, as a dad. But within a click, and maybe it's just my mentality, and you could completely tell me if I'm off base. But I think Mean Girls when I hear the term click. And
I know. I think the same thing, and I'm like, no.
So I think Mean Girls, and I just wonder who's going to be Regina. I don't want to be Regina.
For those of you who have never seen Mean Girls, Regina was the not so nice one, the one that everybody wanted to kind of throat punch in a non-violent way. If I totally messed that up, but you know what I mean. She was not the nice lady.
Yeah.
And actually, and it's funny because Ashley just said that this is fantastic. Like, this whole right now is fantastic because she's been a military wife for 3 years now. And it's the first time that she's ever seen wives building a positive foundation for communication among each other. So what I'm guessing that she's saying is she probably hasn't heard many people say, look, just rip the Band-Aid off, go ahead and give it to me straight. I can take it, I promise. And I respect you enough to let you go ahead and rip me a little bit. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen that often. And it's that foundation comes with the crazy things that happens in our lives, those times where we have no choice but to pull together and close ranks, those really crisis situations. And when that happens, I think the rest of it is baloney, and we've broken through all those other barriers, so we can land our planes a lot quicker nowadays.
Right.
And you know what? And Brian, and I love you, Brian, he says, remember, male spouses can be awesome additions to the tribe. Didn't you all see Army Wives? Roland was awesome. And yes, Roland was awesome. And you know what? And I think that it's sometimes can be a lot harder, allowing male spouses into our tribe. But it's just because it's so foreign. But I will tell you this, you let a male spouse into your tribe, and I'm going to tell you, he's going to bring the gut check, and he's going to bring the perspective. So watch out.
And sometimes he brings that perspective of the husband that you need to see.
Oh, so much so. So much so. And, it's funny because, actually the next question kind of details, the question is basically how can we support others authentically through these changes, but more so, I think, like in the book, okay, so when dealing with things like infertility and stuff like that, we don't really know how to, like, I just come up with my stock answer, which is, hey, how you doing? Anything I can do? Everything good to go? Okay, call me. And I just, those stock answers are just because it makes me uncomfortable. So how would one be able to support someone, like, authentically? Like, I know I feel how to do it, but I don't know how to say it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So if we just go back to my personal experiences and the beginning of Military Spouses of Strength, and I'm not putting blame on any kind of person, we have to realize there are two types of people that are looking for authenticity in this situation, right? So we're looking for the person that's injured and how they're going to receive or what is authentic to them. And then we're looking at the person that is trying to be helpful and what is authentic to them. So really it kind of depends on the circumstance. Because in the situation of infertility, we want to be mindful, right, of what they're going through and not creating a trigger for them, but also being authentic and presenting ourselves in how we could assist. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're dealing with somebody that is depressed or suicidal, you, like, from all the resources that I've read, and again, MJ, this is going to be on you, my sociology friend, but, the straight, blunt question, are you thinking of hurting yourself or somebody else? That is the most authentic way to speak to somebody in that situation. So being authentic, you have to think of, authentic of yourself, authentic of the recipient, and then authentic of the situation, and kind of merging them, at least in my opinion.
It makes sense because you kind of have to cater to the situation as well as the individual.
Right.
And it's not a lot of times, and I gotta say this, especially with communication, we are one big military family. We don't all come from the same town. We didn't all come from the same loins. Okay, we're not all gonna speak the same word. So the way that I say something sometimes may not always come across the way that it was meant to be said. So sometimes the message gets lost in translation. So where I may be authentic, and so in that support, well, to be perfectly honest, there's nothing that's stopping the other person from calling BS. Just gonna, you know what I mean? And I think that's a huge challenge, because coming into this lifestyle, I'm from Detroit area. You keep it moving forward. If anybody's talking to you, you wonder why. If somebody's like, I moved away, somebody's like, hey, how are you doing? And I'm like, why are you talking to me? What do you want? And that's, you know what I mean? So I'm going to receive that message totally different. I'm
sorry to interrupt.
No, is there any universal language we could use besides acronyms? Because we love acronyms.
I was just going to say that you and I and Judy from last month, we're all from Michigan, but we all speak these different languages, just, I guess, different dialects. You say word and I say hi. So you're right, we do have to find this universal language, and that is probably the key of how to resolve a lot of our conflicts. And I'm no genius, so I don't have the answer, but it's worth still pursuing.
That makes sense. That makes sense, and it works. The characters in the book, it's interesting because the characters in the book, they're more like friends. They're more like sisters and family. So, in our community, we can relate to that hardcore. We find that our friends, our brothers and sisters on the home front or in uniform, they're our family. Their kids are our family. We're auntie and uncle to, like, everybody. Like, where's the street cred for that? Okay. But sometimes, and this happens to me when I put my, how I'm so proud of my friends and all of the things that we like to do in our military community. I'll post pictures and I will mention them as my family. And sometimes, and I'm sorry if any of my family is listening, I love you. Sometimes they get a little butthurt, and they think that I value my military family more than them. Do you think that those friends who are our family in this life, in this military life, are more blood, and that the blood is more valued or less valued, like that our actual biological families are?
At the end of the day, I think it just comes down to experience. I can guarantee that 90% of the people that I know have at least one relationship within their blood family that is not copacetic. And it's all based on experiences that they've had with the other person. Not to say who's right or wrong, and that can be said likewise on the flip side within the military community. So if you and I have this great connection, and even though we don't have that blood between us, we have those great experiences, and those are what bind us. It's not blood that binds us. Blood is essentially just the reason why we keep going back for more hurt, if that's what's causing us hurt.
Oh my gosh, why do you have to be so poignant? That almost made me cry just now. Holy crap. You know what? And I think what you just said in and of itself is completely authentic. That is like the epitome, the definition of authenticity. And even Brian said that being authentic also is also knowing your limitations, which I kind of think coincides with what you just said, because he states that if you don't know the answer, being authentic is helping to guide them to those correct resources, if that's like all you can do. But knowing your limitations is fantastic. Like taking that hurt as, I just know that I have to take this hurt because because that's my kid, and I'm still working on her. And so, you know, that just kind of ties right back into the book.
Right.
The limitations and, you know, how much we can handle before we burn out. Like, how do we know when we hit that limit, yo? Do you know? Because I don't know yet.
I'm still learning. I've got situations going on in my life right now, and I'm like, where do I call it quits, and where do I say we keep on trucking? I don't know, but
it's one of those things where, you know what, take a break. Like, the majority of the people, and I'm going to go ahead and speak for all of us who are in this room because I just can, because I have the microphone. No, I'm just kidding. We have a very do or die personality. Okay, there is that one element that kind of brings us all together, and we are go go go, and we are do do do, and that's hard to articulate to other people. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't bother me that I'll, at the drop of a hat, you know, drive up to Michigan if something's going on with you. You know what I mean? It doesn't bother me that I might not get any sleep if I'm waiting for a call at 3 o'clock in the morning from someone. You know what I mean? But that's just how we've always done. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person if you haven't done it. That's just, I guess that's my authenticity. What's hard to explain, though, is if a person doesn't experience this life, well, or anything for that matter, firsthand, sometimes it's hard for us to be sympathetic to them. And I'll give you an example. So, as a military spouse, for 17 years now, I'm going to go ahead and put it out there, I even worked as a readiness and deployment support trainer for 3 years. My husband is never deployed. I know sociologically, psychologically, and on behalf of so many other people, I know empathetically what that feels like. But I have never once said to anybody, I can't complain about my husband's schedule. He's gone 2 weeks, back for 1, gone for 3, back for 2, home for a month, gone again for who knows how long. It's just kind of erratic. No big deal. But I have very few people who could be sympathetic to me because I don't know. I don't physically know, even though I've done everything in my life to make sure that I learn that and that I use my resources, which is my time, to help them. So, how can people be sympathetic to other people if they don't know firsthand what that experience is?
Sorry, my dog was driving me nuts, and I'm sure she was driving you too, so I muted and tried to calm her down. But I think that, you know, being sympathetic, like you said, it just requires our resources, and most often our most valuable resources are time. There is a difference between being sympathetic and empathetic, and that difference is in having that firsthand knowledge. So without that firsthand knowledge, you're only going to be able to do the best you can without knowing firsthand. Now, that doesn't mean that... Okay, so... Stinking dog.
Puppy!
So, I guess I'll use another example. My husband, he has done 3 combat deployments and also 2 overseas deployments that were non-combat. But you know what? They were still deployments, and they still sucked. But at the end of the day, I had people that often said, you know what, that the non-combats didn't count because they weren't combat. And with 2 little babies, the ages of 2 and under 1, when I was living in California, so many miles away from home, living through my first earthquake on my own, The only thing that him not being in combat did for me was knowing that he was safe at the end of the day. So it's just, again, it's being understanding that perceptions are
The perception?
perceptions are different. Sorry, perceptions are different based on the person. And knowing that just I'm so sorry. And
No, you're good. Why don't, if you want to go take care of that really quick, I'm going to go ahead and put it to the readers real quick. I want to ask them that question as well. I want to know what you would do. How you think that we can, be sympathetic to other people without having experienced what they've experienced firsthand. If you encountered someone like myself, especially after having, say, just gotten done with one of your first deployments, or say 10th, you encounter someone like myself who, let's say I open up to you and I'm complaining because he's gone and back and gone and back and gone and back again. I want to know. I want to know your authentic opinion. Good, bad, doesn't matter. I want to know, what do you think about that? And while Karaya is getting those messages. Oh, yeah, you're back.
yay! I feel like jazz hands every time I...
I've always wanted to know, I learned early on, shut it down. Shut it down. I don't say nothing. The very first experience that I ever had as a military spouse, somebody asked me 2 days after I moved in and said, "What does your husband do?" And so I told her. And I didn't know enough about what he did. My husband's in the band, for the record. Yes, he is a Marine bandsman, a drum major, 5524, Ura, Yut Kill, Semper Fi. That doesn't always ring nicely in other people's ears. However, he signed on that dotted line, and he's willing to go any day, any time. Willing, always willing.
And can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Because before I lived with you for a week, I would have never realized that your husband, he leaves, and he's not always home. Being a part of the band doesn't mean that he's always home. So I think a part of being sympathetic is being accepting of gaining knowledge of other people's situations. Because it would have been really easy to say, oh yeah, MJ's husband, his job is cakewalk. He's in the band, he never leaves. But the truth of the matter is, he does leave. From what I've gathered from our conversations, he is a recruiting tool.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means that he's the face of the Marine Corps, and he has to be into those communities.
You know what? I'm so glad you understand that, because not many people do. Michelle, hi Michelle. She says that it's hard either way, but instead of judging, provide a sense of common ground. So it's also okay to just simply say, I don't know how that feels, but I can listen. I think that is also a definition of authenticity. Because in that one sentence, it says, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about, but I am here for you, dude. I'm here for you. And I appreciate that. Sometimes we have to say, I don't know.
A lot of times we have to say, I don't know.
I think it's just the ear. I think it's just the listening ear. Like Dinah says, I would listen to you. Just being sympathetic means listening and lending an ear. And I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. And Carrie, gosh, you guys have some fantastic answers. By showing genuine interest in other people, in other people's struggles and their perspectives, you can be a genuine, active listener.
So let's have a conversation based on that. What's the difference for you between being an active listener and a, for lack of better wording, non-active listener? What are those definitions?
like the MJ version is that I'm actually absorbing the meanings in my brain and allowing myself to feel instead of waiting for myself to talk. Yes, I totally just did that. Instead of waiting for myself to talk.
All I was thinking right then as you were doing this was Madonna.
Oh, sorry. Okay, no, yes, being an active listener, like we've all done it, and we will probably continue to do it, but we will more now after this conversation, all of us will be more aware that sometimes we are just listening to hear ourselves talk till the next time we get to talk, and then active listening is actually absorbing the information and then responding, if necessary, based on the information that we have received. Am I right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, I mean, we have clinical definitions, right? But then we also have authentic definitions. There's that word again. But we do have clinical, which is a good basis, so that it puts us all on the same understanding of what being an active listener is. But at the end of the day, like, so they teach in school that we all learn differently, right? We have kinetic and visual and audio, and I kind of feel like being an active listener is the same thing. We have to utilize the tools that are best for us in order to be an active listener. I really suck at reading body language, and I really know that I really suck about reading body language. So my go-to is going to be asking you what you really mean, because you might be saying it with your body, but I'm not receiving.
I don't know what this means. If you can figure it out, let me know. It's funny because even Ashley, she said exactly what you said. It's great to ask questions to gain that insight as well, because, like, we don't know what we don't know. So, just because we don't initially understand, it doesn't mean that, we can't learn about each other's lives and each other's struggles. And Teresa, don't judge. Just don't judge. And you know what? That's absolutely true. And it's hard. I think it's hard in our lifestyle not to. I mean, when you, especially, I'm going to have to say right off the bat, I was a judger, McJudgerson, when I first left Detroit. Write it down. Because I was like, okay, that lady has RBF, and she does not look nice, and that's coming from somebody from the D. And then this lady, she's smiling at me, so what is it that she wants? You know what I mean? And so it was very difficult. I judged so hard, but I should have asked more questions, because I think that if I would have asked more about a person's lifestyle, their struggles, what they're going through, maybe I would have more people in my life. Not that I don't have lots now. I just wish I would have figured it out sooner.
Well, and I think, too, that we also need to realize, like, I like to say that I don't judge, and I try really darn hard not to, because I don't want others to judge me. But at the core of who we are, we all have opinions on how we would do things, and so we base and judge other people and their actions based on how we would do it. So it ends up being a judgment. And the only way to overcome that is to self-reflect and just accept, right? Because, MJ, if you and I were put in the same scenario, we would both go about things two separate ways. And that doesn't mean it's right or wrong just because we went about it different.
Mm-hmm.
So at Camp Pendleton, right before my husband was retired, one of my favorite billboards was, if you see something wrong, do something right. And that has always, always, always stuck out to me. But how we get to right is not always the same.
Oh, what do you mean? How we get to right isn't the same.
So you and I can look at something wrong, but how we end up correcting that and making that something right is not going to be the same. I mean, it could be something basic, like you see a kid selling drugs. Well, obviously, most people are going to just turn around and call the cops. That would be basic, but there are going to be people that go beyond that and talk to that kid and maybe become the big brother, big sister mentor. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there are different steps for different people.
Okay. And this kind of goes along with, okay, so Ashley, very active, Ashley. And you guys better be getting your social media on. I'm just saying, just throwing that reminder out there. Hashtag MS Book Club. Ashley has a very good question. And I'm going to pose it to you. She says, I'm myself always the person that never knows how to ask for help, whether it's asking for help at Thanksgiving dinner or just helping me get out of a rut while my husband's gone. How do you recommend I open myself up within my military community?
Well, I think the first step is finding like-minded people. You can fake a friendship, but at the end of the day, if it's not there, it's going to dissolve. So find what interests you and seek out those friendships from there. I like to be a person that gives back, and so I look for ways to volunteer within the community. I'm not a crafty person, but if I was, I might go to a paint and sip. But it's looking to forge those relationships where there's a commonality. Because if the commonality is not there, it's going to be a lot harder to find a common ground.
Okay, so let's say I'm brand new to the area, and I don't know anybody, and I'm getting ready to be isolated and be a shut-in. In order to prevent that, where would I go? Who would I talk to in order to open myself up? Where's that vessel, that avenue to get me out there? What is it like? How do I do that?
Okay. So I know this about MJ. MJ also likes to scary face, RBF almost. MJ also likes to volunteer within the community. MJ is a very outgoing person. She's social with introvert personality traits. And so what that means is that she likes to talk to people. Yep, we talk a lot. But she re-energizes by having alone time. So for a person like MJ, I would say you go and you talk to your family readiness officer or your FRG leader, and you find out ways that you can involve yourself within the unit volunteering. Or you go to the Marine Corps Family Team Building or the Army Readiness Group, and you find out ways that you can include yourself in the community. Now, I have another friend by the name of Katie. She, I don't know that I want to say is crafty, but what would you say she is, MJ? She's social, she's an extrovert. She's like crafty in a sense that she likes to act. So for her, it would be going and looking for acting clubs or singing clubs. I'm sorry?
Community theater.
Theater, that's right. So the best advantage, in my opinion, about living in a military community is we have people from all over, right, that are ending up making up this community. And somewhere along the lines, you're going to have somebody else that has the similar interests that you do. We might not speak the same dialect, but that doesn't mean that me being from Michigan and my friend Brian that just posted a question being from California, that doesn't mean that we can't find a common ground in how to interact with each other. It's about finding those common grounds.
No, absolutely. And actually, Michelle's comment said, so even if it's like a horrible one, isn't it better to have a piece of broken wood rather than nothing? She said, I'm an introverted extrovert and hate going out of my way, but sometimes you have to move out of that comfort zone just a bit. And I think, and you know what, Michelle, you're absolutely right. And I think that moving yourself out of your comfort zone, coupled with Liz's ideas of, okay, you have to find that commonality, that interest. If you are interested in acting, be part of a play. If you are interested in volunteering, go do that. And even if you have never put yourself willingly in a group of people and are terrified, you're not going to walk away without either a friend or some massive growth. And I know that sounds awful, but that's not awful. That's not awful. So the opportunity to do something, like finding something to do or finding something that you enjoy, coupled with actually putting yourself out there, and that's a risk that not a whole lot of people are willing to take. Carrie says to join the squadron Facebook pages, and that
goes back to that social media concept that we talked about earlier.
Represent. Oh, by the way, reminder: social media contest. MS #MS Book Club.
With your picture.
So force support events, even if they sound corny. And you know what? I was one of those people. People were trying to get me for a really long time, for like 6 years, to try Lynx, and I didn't try it until maybe 5 years ago. And then I ended up working in the office. I loved it so much. My daughter became a mentor before me even. So, even if it sounds corny, you'll most likely meet people there who are looking for like the same thing that you are. So at least you'll find yourself like, for lack of a better term, a battle buddy. Or a deployment spouse. I love that term, by the way. That deployment wife term, like those BFFs. Oh, love it. I love it.
Your body language always makes me crack up.
Sorry.
Well, goes back to me not knowing how to read body language.
It's all about the communication, yo.
So we missed it, but Christina did ask, how do you get the younger spouse to receive advice from an older spouse that has been there and done that? Do you want me to take that, or do you want to take that?
Take it away, sister.
So I actually have a personal experience on this, and it really sucks, and I really learned it the hard way. But sometimes that's what you got to do to grow. I was giving advice, and it wasn't asked for, and I ended up damaging that friendship. I think, and so from learning from that experience, I think that, if somebody asks for advice, then it's okay to give. If you see something wrong, do something right, and that would be another time to give unsolicited advice. But other than that, advice often comes across as judgy. And sometimes people really just got to learn by making their own mistakes. I know I've had to. When my husband first joined, I did not know that there was such a thing as a Diddy move. And so I slept on the floor of our apartment for 9 months. And you know what? I'll never have to do that again because I learned. But at the same time, so maybe that was a bad example, because at the same time, if any one of my friends would have came and said, you know what, you don't have to be sleeping on the darn floor, I would have been like, oh, thank you.
Okay. We are getting the names from the social media contests. They're coming in. Can everybody give me a drum roll, please? I know I can't hear you, but you're doing it. Yes, okay. Our winners for the social media contest, who win a book each, are Brian and Carrie. Woo! So, the book that they have just won is called, and my prior book club peeps are going to freak out. It's called I'll Be Seeing You by Loretta Nyhan and Suzanne Hayes. It's about two women who are brought together by an unlikely twist of fate. Gloria and Rita begin a remarkable correspondence. The friendship forged by their letters allows them to survive the loneliness and uncertainty of waiting on the home front and gives them the courage to face the battles raging in their very own backyards. Just a quick little note about this, and you'll probably hear more about it next month, but the co-authors of this book actually wrote this book with never meeting each other. That's where social media is awesome. They emailed each other in character for over a year, and that's how this book came about. So it's probably by far and away the best book we have ever read, ever, in my opinion. So we've got that down. And is there any saved rounds? Do we have any saved rounds? While we're doing that. The purchase link and the registration link for that book, by the way, is going to be coming your way after this hangout. So once you receive that, go ahead and register like stat pronto. And I would like to go ahead and thank Liz. Elizabeth Snell, you are the bomb diggity, straight out of 1994.
Seriously? 94?
Sorry. I had to do it. I'm sorry. You want me to go lower? And we are really, really excited to have you. A lot of insight, a lot of awesome questions, great, fantastic answers, great answers and questions from the audience. And, you know, Liz is going to be in our audience next month too, right?
Well, of course.
And I really look forward to seeing you for next month's book club. I'll be seeing you next month. Bye.
Bye.